The woman in my kitchen was wearing my wife's apron, the pale blue one with the small flower pattern, the one I hadn't seen anyone wear since the day Clara was buried 3 years ago, the one I'd kept in the bottom drawer with all the other things I couldn't throw away but couldn't look at either. And now this stranger, this person I'd never met in my life, was standing at my stove, stirring a pot of beef stew with that apron tied around her waist like she had every right to be there. My hand moved to the rifle on my back before my mind caught up with my instincts. Because whoever she was, whatever she was doing here, she was cooking dinner. And the smell of that food, beef and vegetables and herbs I couldn't name, was the first thing that had made this house smell like an actual home since Clara left. I stopped in the doorway, didn't raise the rifle, but didn't lower it either. She turned when she heard my boots on the floor, didn't jump, didn't look scared, like she'd been expecting me to come home. "Dinner's almost ready," she said. Her voice was steady, calm. "You should wash up." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Late 20s, I guessed. Dark brown hair pulled back in a practical knot. Hands that showed work, not leisure. Brown eyes that were steady and clear and holding something behind them I couldn't quite name. Not fear. Something older than fear. Something like determination that had been tested and hadn't broken. "You're standing in my house," I said. My voice came out flat, controlled. "I know," she said, "cooking at my stove." "Yes." "Wearing my—" I stopped. Didn't finish the sentence. She glanced down at the apron. Something crossed her face, maybe regret, but then it was gone. "I found it in a drawer. I needed something to keep my dress clean. If you want me to take it off—" "No," I cut her off, faster than I meant to. Silence settled between us like dust. She watched me, measuring something. "My name is Evelyn Kincaid," she said. "Eve. And before you reach for that rifle, you should know I don't mean any harm. I need a place to stay. 3 nights. In exchange, I'll work." "Work doing what?" She gestured toward the window. Through it, I could see the yard swept clean, firewood stacked neat. The section of fence I'd left broken for 6 months now, roughly repaired. "Your ranch needs more work than one person can handle," she said. "I can help." I set the rifle down, leaned it against the wall, but I kept it close. "Sit down," I said, "and tell me everything." She pulled out a chair at the table, folded her hands, looked me straight in the eye without apology, but without pride either. Just the flat, clear truth of someone who'd already lost too much to waste time on pretense. "I was traveling with a wagon train out of Santa Fe," she said. 3 days back we hit a wash that flooded overnight. Lost 2 wagons, lost 1 man. I had nobody on that train, no family, no husband. I was heading to my cousin's place in New Mexico, but I don't know exactly where, just a town name. And I don't have money left for supplies or a horse. My mule broke a leg in the flood, had to be put down. She said that last part without a flicker, which told me that particular grief had already been dealt with, privately, alone, the way she seemed to deal with most things. I walked 2 days to reach Dry Creek. When I got to town, the hotel wanted 15 cents a night. I don't have 15 cents. The man at the feed store told me there was a rancher about 4 miles east who lived alone. Said the place had been falling apart for years, and the man who owned it didn't seem to much care about it anymore. She paused, looked down at her hands for the first time. So I thought maybe I could offer something useful. In exchange for a few nights' shelter, a meal, some work done, something worth trading. I studied her face, the faded yellow edge of a bruise on her left wrist where the sleeve had slipped back. Boots that had been repaired with rough twine. The careful way she held her shoulders, not defeated, not desperate, just settled, like a person who'd rehearsed every version of how this moment might go and made peace with all of them. "You thought you'd just let yourself into a stranger's house," I said. "I thought I'd find out if anyone was home first," she said. There wasn't. So I started a fire, started cooking. Figured either you'd come home and accept the offer, or you'd come home and throw me out. Either way, you'd have hot dinner waiting. I looked at her for a long time, looked at the bruise, the stitched boot, the way she sat with her back straight and her eyes level. This woman wasn't running from poverty. She was running from something specific, something that left marks. 3 days, I said finally. That's all. She nodded. You sleep in the barn. Agreed. And I'm not a charitable man. I want you to be clear on that. I'm not asking for charity, she said. I'm asking for 3 days of work in exchange for 3 nights of shelter. That's a transaction. I picked up the spoon, took a mouthful of the stew, didn't say anything for a moment. The stew was good, better than good. Rich and seasoned, with something I couldn't identify. The kind of warmth that started in your stomach and moved outward like the first fire of autumn. I hadn't tasted anything that good in 3 years. I didn't say that out loud. Fine, I said. 3 days. We ate in silence. The kind of silence that sits between two people who don't know each other well enough to make small talk, but are aware enough to feel the weight of words unspoken. She finished her portion, stood, started washing the dishes without being asked. I watched her move through the kitchen, efficient, practiced, like someone who'd done this work 1,000 times before. When she was done, she turned. There's one thing I need to know, I said. She stopped. How did you know about the apron? It wasn't somewhere easy to find. She turned back. Her eyes were unreadable in the lamplight. I was looking for something to use. I opened the drawer. I saw it. And you didn't think maybe that was private? Pause. I thought, she said slowly, that if a man keeps something in the bottom drawer, doesn't throw it away, but doesn't use it either, then he's not ready to let go, but he's not ready to hold on either. Her eyes softened slightly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. I didn't answer, just stood up and walked outside. The night air was cold against my face. October in Arizona Territory. The kind of cold that warned you winter was coming, whether you were ready or not. I stood there in the dark, listening to the sounds I hadn't heard in 3 years. Someone moving in my house, water running as she washed the last dish. The soft click of the door as she walked out to the barn. There was a person in this house, after 3 years of emptiness. And I didn't know if I felt angry about that or relieved. I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, listening to silence that felt different than the silence I'd lived with for 3 years. Clara had died 3 years ago. Fever. It came fast, went faster. I was out on a cattle drive 4 days away. By the time I got the message and rode back, she'd been buried for 2 days. I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get to ask if she was in pain. I didn't get to tell her that this ranch, this life, didn't mean anything without her. And for 3 years, I lived like a dead man. Worked because I had to work. Ate because the body demanded it. Slept because exhaustion eventually won. But nothing had meaning until tonight, when I smelled food cooking, when I saw lamplight in the window, when I saw her, this stranger, standing in my kitchen wearing Clara's apron. And some part of me, the part I didn't want to admit existed, thought maybe this is what it feels like to be alive again. I woke at 5 in the morning. Eve was already up. Had been up since 4 from the look of things. When I stepped outside, she was at the east fence line, examining the damage. How long have you been up? I asked. About an hour. She turned. East fence is down about 60 yards. Chicken coop has a gap in the back wall. Something's been getting in at night, probably a weasel. And the water trough by the barn has a crack running about 4 inches along the base. It hasn't broken through yet, but it will by winter if it freezes. I stared at her. You walked the fence line in the dark. Couldn't sleep, she said simply. So I walked. Red flags were going up in my head. How did she know exactly what to check? How did she find problems I'd been ignoring for months in 1 hour, in the dark? But before I could ask, she pulled out a piece of brown paper, handed it to me. A list, written in neat, precise handwriting. East fence repair, 60 yards chicken coop, back wall gap, water trough crack. Barn roof, missing shingles on south side. Garden plot, overgrown, needs clearing. I looked at the list, looked at her. You made a list of everything wrong with my ranch, I said. I made a list of what needs doing, she said. There's a difference. Where did you learn to do this? My father's ranch, outside Flagstaff. I've been working ranches since I was 9 years old. Had? I caught the past tense. Her expression hardened. Had. She didn't elaborate. I didn't push. We were still standing there when I heard hoofbeats coming up the drive, hard and fast. Not the casual pace of a neighbor dropping by. I turned to see Tom Briggs riding in at a gallop, pulling up short in the yard in a spray of dust. Tom was a rancher who ran a small spread about 2 miles south. Good man, reliable. But right now, his face was white around the edges. "Cole," he said, voice tight. "You hear what happened in town?" "Haven't been to town," I said. Tom leaned down from the saddle. "Jed Holloway's place. Somebody served him papers yesterday afternoon. County marshal came and everything. Says he owes back debt on his land title. Some banking claim from 5 years back he never knew about. They gave him 30 days to settle the debt or vacate." I felt something cold move through me. That's not right. Jed's had that land since '79. "I know," Tom said. "Everybody knows, but the papers look legal. Jed showed them to a lawyer in town, and the man couldn't find a clear reason to dispute them." Tom glanced toward the house, noticed Eve standing in the doorway. His eyes went back to me, questioning. "She's working here for a few days," I said shortly. "What else?" "Word is there's a man in town. Came in 2 days ago, staying at the hotel, name of Victor Hale." Tom said the name like it tasted bad. "He's got men with him, 3 or 4 at least. And he's been buying drinks at the saloon, asking questions about who owns what land in the county, what the water rights look like, where the railroad's planning to come through." Pause. "He's a speculator, Cole, the land grab kind. And Jed's place is just the first." I said nothing for a moment. My mind was already moving. What's Jed going to do? What can he do? He's got a wife and 2 kids. He doesn't have the money to fight it in court. Tom shook his head. "I'm writing to warn whoever I can today. Figured you should know since your land's worth something, sitting right where it does between 2 water sources." I looked across the yard, looked at the fence line Eve and I had started talking about fixing, looked at the garden plot she'd already started clearing. The dead soil she'd begun turning over with a purpose that made the whole idea of planting something there feel suddenly possible again. "I hear you," I said. "Thank you, Tom." Tom turned his horse, started to ride off, then stopped, looked back. "Cole, that woman, you trust her?" I glanced at Eve. She was watching us from the doorway, her face carefully neutral. "I don't trust anybody," I said. Tom nodded once, then rode away. I stood in the yard for a long moment after he left. Then I turned and walked back to the house. Eve was still standing in the doorway. "Victor Hale," I said. "Not a question. You know that name?" It wasn't a question, because her face had already given her away. The careful neutrality had cracked, just for a second. But I'd seen it. She stepped back from the doorway, walked into the kitchen. I followed. "Yes," she said finally. "I know that name." The silence stretched between us like wire pulled tight. "Tell me," I said. She pulled out a chair, sat down, folded her hands on the table. When she looked up at me, her eyes held something I hadn't seen before. Not broken, never broken, but cracked through in the way that things that have survived too much get cracked, where you can see right through to the hard, dark center. "My father," she said. Her voice was flat, controlled. The kind of control that comes from having already been through fire and learning to live right next to the heat. "Daniel Kincaid. He owned a ranch outside Flagstaff, 200 acres. Victor Hale took it." She paused, breathed. "Forged debt documents, fake notary seals. My father fought in court. He lost." Another pause. 6 months ago, my father had a stroke. He's alive, but he can't work, can barely speak. Everything he built is gone." I watched her, waited. "And you came here because?" "Because when I heard Hale was moving operations to Arizona territory, I followed him. I tracked him for 3 months, learned his pattern, and when I saw his men scouting this area, asking about water rights and ranch land, I knew." She looked at me directly. "I knew he'd come for you next." The words landed in the room like stones dropped in still water. "So you broke into my house," I said slowly, "cooked me dinner, Played the helpless traveler. Why? To warn me? No. Her voice was steady, clear. To see if you were strong enough to fight back. The anger that flared up in me was hot and immediate. Get out. She didn't move. Cole, listen. I said get out. I don't care about your father. I don't care about Victor Hale. And I sure as hell don't need you using my land as your battleground. Her eyes flashed. Your land is already his battleground, whether you fight or not. I turned away, walked to the window, stared out at the ranch I'd let decay for 3 years. 3 days, you said. You've got 2 left. Then you're gone. She stood. I heard the chair scrape against the floor. Fine, she said quietly. Then she walked out. I stood at that window for a long time after she left, watching her cross the yard toward the barn, watching the way she moved. Purposeful, undefeated. I'd been wrong about her. She wasn't desperate. She wasn't dangerous. She was both those things, and more. She was someone who'd lost everything and decided that losing one more time wasn't as scary as doing nothing at all. And that made her the most dangerous person I'd ever met. She didn't sleep in the barn that night. I knew because I didn't sleep either. I lay in the dark, angry at myself for letting a stranger make me feel something after 3 years of feeling nothing. I got up before dawn, walked outside, found her sitting on the fence rail, watching the sun come up. We sat in silence for a long time. Not the awkward silence of strangers. Something else. Something shared. After 5 minutes, she spoke without looking at me. I'll leave today. 2 more days, I said. That was the deal. The deal changed. I'm not throwing you out. She turned then, surprised. Last night you said, last night I was angry, I cut her off. This morning I've been thinking. I stepped closer to the fence. Tom Briggs said Jed Holloway's going to lose his land. If Hale's doing what you say he's doing, who's next? Pete Reyes? Minnie Calhoun? Pause. Or me? You, she said. I nodded slowly. Tell me everything, not the version you practiced, the truth. She jumped down from the fence, stood facing me in the early morning light, and for the first time she told me the whole story. Daniel Kincaid's ranch, 11 years of building, good land, good water, a place built with bare hands and stubborn will. Victor Hale arrived in Flagstaff 2 years ago, started buying land from willing sellers, but when people refused, he found other ways. For Daniel Kincaid, the way was a forged promissory note, tied to a water rights agreement Daniel had supposedly signed in 1878. Except Daniel didn't own the land until 1880. The document looked legal. The notary seal looked legitimate, but there were small errors. The seal was from Maricopa County. The land was in Yavapai County. Different jurisdictions, small errors, but the kind a corrupt judge could overlook. They appealed. Lost. Then Daniel's ranch hand, a man named Marcus Webb, found evidence of the forgery. Real evidence. Documentation proving the seal was fraudulent. 2 weeks before the hearing, Marcus's body was found in a canyon. Riding accident, they said, but Marcus didn't drink, didn't ride at night, and didn't fall off horses he'd been riding for 15 years. Eve's voice broke as she told me this part. My father tried to keep fighting, but after Marcus died, he knew. If he kept going, Hale would kill him too. She stopped, breathed. So he gave up, signed the papers, moved out. Her eyes were hard when she looked at me. 3 months later, he had a stroke. The doctor said stress. I say it was a broken heart. I listened, absorbed every word. And you? I asked. Why didn't you give up? She looked at me directly. Because I'm not my father. I don't break. I get even. We walked the fence line together after that, working in the cool morning air, not talking much. But the silence between us had changed. It wasn't the careful silence of strangers anymore. It was something else. Something that felt like the beginning of trust. Around midday, I told her I was riding to town. I need to see those papers Jed got served, and I need to look Victor Hale in the eye. She nodded. Didn't argue. Be careful. I rode into Dry Creek alone. Went straight to Jed Holloway's place. Found him sitting on his porch with the document in his hands, looking at it like a man trying to read something in a language he almost speaks. He looked up when I arrived. Relief crossed his face at not being alone with this for a minute. "Cole?" "Jed, can I see it?" He handed over the document without a word. I read it slowly, twice. Promissory note dated 1881. Supposedly signed by Jed's father when he first established the deed. Amount, $2,400. I looked up at Jed. "Your father sign any notes in 81? Jed's face tightened. "My father died in 79, Cole." There it was. I looked back at the signature, at the notary seal beneath it, number 1147, Maricopa County, but Jed's land was in Yavapai County. "This seal," I said, "county doesn't match your land jurisdiction." Jed looked up, a flicker of hope. "Does that matter?" "It should, in a fair court." But before I could say more, Jed's wife Sarah came out. She was pregnant, about 7 months, tired, scared. "Mr. Cole," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. If we fight this in court and we lose, do we owe court costs too?" I didn't have an answer. Sarah continued, voice shaking slightly. "Hale's man came by yesterday, offered us $3,000 cash to settle, said we could take the money and move somewhere safe. Start over." She looked at her husband. "That's more than the debt." "It's a bribe, Sarah," Jed said. "It's enough to feed our children," she replied. I stood there watching them. This quiet argument between two people who loved each other and were both terrified in different ways. "What would you do?" Jed asked me. I thought of Clara, thought of 3 years of not fighting for anything. "I'd want to fight," I said carefully, "but I'd listen to my wife." I left them there, rode into town proper, found Victor Hale at the hotel, corner table, reading a newspaper, coffee at his elbow. He was exactly what Eve had described, well-dressed, groomed, the kind of careful, expensive quality that money and patience build together. He looked up when I walked in, smiled. "Mr. Marchant, I was hoping you'd stop by." I didn't sit. "You know my name?" "I make it my business to know the names of men whose land interests me." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit. Let's talk like civilized men." I sat, but I kept my eyes on him. "Your property, Mr. Marchant, is positioned at a critical junction. 2 natural springs. Good elevation. Railroad surveyors will pass through this area within the year. When they do, your land will be worth 10 times what it is now." He paused. "I'd like to purchase it before that happens. I'm not selling." He wasn't fazed. "I'm offering $6,000 cash, more than fair market value." "And if I refuse?" His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Then you continue to struggle with a property you haven't properly maintained in 3 years. You continue to live alone in a house built for a family. You continue to exist." The word landed like a knife. I leaned forward slightly. "How do you know about my wife?" "Public records," Hale said smoothly. "I told you, I do my research." But there was something else in his tone, something that said he knew more than he was telling. I stood. "I'm not interested in your offer, Mr. Hale." He stood too, extended his hand. I didn't take it. "Mr. Marchant, a word of advice. From one man to another." He paused. "Be very careful about the company you keep. Strangers with vendettas can drag good men into fights that aren't theirs." "He knows about Eve." I straightened. "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning. I've seen men lose everything because they chose the wrong allies." He picked up his newspaper. "Think about my offer. You have until the end of the month." I rode back to the ranch hard, my mind racing faster than my horse. Found Eve at the barn when I arrived. "He knows you're here," I said without preamble. She didn't look surprised, just tired, like she'd been expecting this and was only now feeling the full weight of being right. "What did he say?" "He didn't say your name. Didn't have to. He warned me about strangers with vendettas." I dismounted, tied my horse. "How would he know? You said you followed him here. He has people everywhere. That's how he works. He gets there first, buys information. Before anyone realizes what's happening, he already knows the shape of the place. She looked at me. Who in Dry Creek would have told him about me? Could be anybody. Feed store man, hotel clerk, someone who saw you arrive. We stood there in the yard, the sun starting to set behind us. Then she pulled something from her coat, a telegram. This came while you were gone, addressed to the ranch. I took it, read it. From Franklin Aldridge Prescott, have evidence stop. Seal 1147 documented 4-county stop. Same man stop. Need original docs to build case stop. Can testify if you act fast stop. Time critical stop. I looked up at her. You wired him. 3 weeks ago. Told him I was tracking Hale to Dry Creek. Asked him to be ready. 3 weeks. I stared at her. How long have you actually been here? In this area? She exhaled. 3 weeks. I've been watching, planning, waiting for the right moment. And you waited until now to approach me. I needed to be sure that you were the right person, that you'd fight. Pause. And I needed to know if you'd blame me for what's coming. I looked at the telegram again, then at her. You've been planning this for a long time. Yes. Using me. Yes. No apology, just honesty. I folded the telegram, put it in my pocket. Then I pulled something else out, a worn leather journal. What's this? It belonged to Marcus Webb, the ranch hand who died. I opened it. Inside were pages of meticulous notes, dates, document numbers, seal comparisons, and a list. Properties taken by V. Hale. Flagstaff, 4 ranches. Prescott, 6 ranches. Tucson, 3 ranches. Phoenix, 2 ranches. Total victims, 15. Method, forged promissory notes. Common element, notary seal number, 1147. Deceased, Clarence Webb, died 1879. And at the bottom, deaths suspected. Marcus Webb, riding accident, 1885. Thomas Gaines, wagon accident, 1884. Samuel Price, fall from barn, 1883. I stared at the page. He's killed people. Yes. And you have proof. Marcus did. This journal. If we can get it to Aldridge with the forged documents from Dry Creek, we can prove a pattern. She paused. But we need to move fast. Hale will file court dates within days. I closed the journal. Looked at her standing there in the fading light. This woman who'd lied to me, manipulated me, used me, and who was also the only person in 3 years who'd reminded me what it felt like to care about something. I'm not doing this for you, I said. She nodded. I'm doing it because Jed Holloway's wife is pregnant and scared, because Minnie Calhoun built her ranch with her bare hands after her husband died, because if I let Hale take their land without fighting, I'm no better than the man who let his own land die for 3 years. I paused. But I need to know one thing. What? If this goes wrong, if Hale comes after us, are you willing to see it through, even if it costs everything? She didn't hesitate. I already lost everything. I've got nothing left to lose. I looked at her for a long moment. Good, because neither do I. That night we sat at the kitchen table, went through Marcus Webb's journal page by page, made notes, drew connections. Around midnight, Eve stood up, stretched. We should get some rest. Tomorrow we start gathering evidence. But she didn't move toward the door. Cole? Yeah? Thank you for not throwing me out, for listening. I looked up at her. Don't thank me yet, we haven't won anything. I know. But you chose to fight. That's already more than most people do. She turned to go. I stopped her. Eve. She turned back. Why are you really doing this? It's not just about your father, is it? Long pause. She came back to the table, sat down. When Marcus Webb died, my father gave up. He signed those papers, walked away. Her voice was quieter now, and I watched him break, watched the stroke happen, watched him lose everything, his land, his speech, his pride. Pause. I'm fighting because I couldn't save him, but maybe I can save someone else's father, someone else's home. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't let the tears fall. Maybe that's enough. I stood. crossed the kitchen, stood beside her chair. For a moment we were just two broken people in a kitchen at midnight, two people who'd lost everything and were trying to find a reason to keep going. "You're not using me anymore," I said quietly. "No. And I'm not just fighting for land." "No." Pause. "So what are we doing?" "I don't know," she said. "Me neither." We stood there, close enough to touch, but not touching. Then she stood, our faces inches apart. "We should," she started. I kissed her. It wasn't planned, wasn't thought through, just happened. She kissed me back, slow, tentative, real. When we pulled apart, neither of us said anything for a moment. "We should go," she said finally. "Yeah." But neither of us moved. Then she picked up the journal. I picked up my hat. "Let's finish this," I said. She nodded, and we walked out into the night, ready to fight a man who'd built an empire on other people's broken dreams, ready to prove that sometimes the people who've lost everything are the most dangerous ones of all, because they've got nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for. Morning came cold and clear, the kind of Arizona October morning where you could see your breath in the air and feel winter waiting just beyond the horizon. I found Eve already up, standing in the garden plot behind the house. The place where Clara used to grow tomatoes and squash. The place I'd let go to weeds and dead soil for 3 years because I couldn't stand to look at it. Eve was turning the soil with a long-handled fork, pulling up roots, working like the garden mattered. "You're up early," I said. She didn't stop working. "Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd do something useful." I picked up a second fork from the barn, started working the other end of the plot. We worked in silence for a while. The only sounds were metal biting into earth and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. After an hour, she stopped, leaned on her fork. "We need to talk about the plan." "I'm listening." "We need documents from the other ranchers. If Hale served papers to Jed, he's probably served them to others too, or will soon. We need to see if they all use the same forged seal." I nodded. Minnie Calhoun, Pete Reyes, Frank Dodd on the East Ridge. If Hale's targeting water rights, they're all vulnerable. We visit them today, get their documents. Then we ride to Prescott, meet with Aldridge, get certified copies of the original land filings from the territorial court. That's 2 days' ride each way. I know. Hale will notice we're gone. He already knows we're planning something. We just need to move faster than he can react. I looked at the turned soil, at the work we'd done in an hour. "You think we can win this?" She met my eyes. "I think if we don't try, Hale wins by default. And I'm tired of letting men like him win." We saddled up an hour later, made our first stop at Minnie Calhoun's place. Minnie was 62 years old, widow for 8 years, ran her ranch alone with the kind of stubborn competence that made younger men look soft. She was on her porch when we rode up, rifle across her lap, not pointed at us but not exactly welcoming either. "Cole Marchant," she said. "Haven't seen you in a year. Who's the woman?" "Eve Kincaid. She's helping me with something." "Helping you with what?" I dismounted, walked to the porch steps. "Minnie, did you get papers served recently? About a debt on your land?" Her expression hardened. "Got them 2 days ago. Some fancy lawyer from Tucson saying my Robert signed a promissory note in '82, owing $2,800. She stood up, still holding the rifle. "Robert died in '81, Cole, year before that supposed note was signed." "Can I see the papers?" She went inside, came back with a document, handed it over. I read it quickly. My stomach sank. Promissory note, dated 1882, signed by Robert Calhoun, and at the bottom, the same notary seal, number 1147, Maricopa County, same pattern. "Minnie," I said carefully, "this seal, it's fraudulent. The man who filed this claim, Victor Hale, he's been using a stolen notary seal to forge documents across 4 counties. She looked at me hard. "You can prove that?" Eve stepped forward. "We have documentation. My father lost his ranch the same way. Same seal. Same pattern. There's a federal land examiner in Prescott who's been tracking this for years. If we can get your document and the others to him, He can build a case." Minnie studied Eve for a long moment. "Your father. Where's he now?" "He had a stroke, lost his ability to work, lost everything." Something shifted in Minnie's face. "My Robert built this ranch with his bare hands, died the day after we made the final payment. I'll be damned if some city thief takes it with fake papers." She handed me the document. "You take this, you prove it's fraud, and you put that man in the ground where he belongs." We rode to Pete Reyes's place next, found him in his barn, repairing a wagon wheel. His daughter Maria, 8 years old, answered our knock. "Papa's in the barn," she said shyly. Pete looked up when we entered. Quiet man. Kept to himself mostly. But I'd always respected him. "Cole, what brings you out here? Did you get papers served? About your land?" His expression clouded. "Yesterday morning, debt claim from 78. I don't understand it. I paid off this land free and clear 5 years ago. Can I see the papers?" He pulled them from his workbench, handed them over reluctantly. Same seal, 1147, same county mismatch. "Pete," I said, "this is fraud. The man who filed this, he's done it to at least a dozen ranchers across the territory. We're building a case against him." Pete looked toward the barn door where Maria was playing in the yard. "If I fight this and lose, I lose everything. But if I don't fight—" He stopped, looked at me. "What do I tell her? That I was too scared to try?" He handed me the document. "You fight him. I'm with you." Frank Dodd was harder to convince. We found him at his property on the East Ridge, bigger spread than most, more cattle, more resources, also more to lose. "Why should I trust you people?" he said when I explained. "I don't even know her. And you, Cole, you've been a ghost for 3 years. Now suddenly you're riding around playing hero?" "I'm not playing anything," I said evenly. "I'm trying to stop a thief from taking what's yours." "So you say. But how do I know this isn't some scheme? How do I know you're not working with this Hale character?" Eve stepped forward. "Because Victor Hale killed my father's ranch hand when he tried to expose the fraud. Because Hale will do the same to anyone who stands in his way. And because if you don't stand with us, you'll fall alone." Frank stared at her. "That's quite a speech." "It's not a speech, it's a fact." He looked at the documents I'd brought from Minnie and Pete, compared them to his own. All 3 had the same seal. "All right," he said finally. "I'm in. But if this goes sideways, I'm holding you responsible." Fair enough. By late afternoon, we had 4 documents, 4 ranchers willing to stand together, 4 families ready to fight. We returned to my ranch as the sun was setting, found Tom Briggs waiting in the yard. "Cole, need to talk to you." We went inside. Tom looked at the documents spread on my kitchen table. "You're really doing this?" "We're really doing this." He sat down heavily. "Hale's filed for a court hearing. Emergency session. 6 days from now. Judge is coming in from Tucson. 6 days. Eve and I exchanged glances. "That's not enough time," she said. "We need to get to Prescott, meet with Aldridge, get the certified court records, get back here, build the case." "Then you better leave tonight," Tom said. I looked at him. "Will you watch the place while we're gone?" "You even have to ask?" That night we prepared, packed light, planned our route. Eve wrote out detailed instructions for the other ranchers in case Hale made a move while we were gone. Around midnight, we were ready. But there was one more thing we had to do. We went to Jed Holloway's place, found him and Sarah still awake, the worry keeping them from sleep. I laid out what we'd found, the pattern across 4 properties. The plan to get to Prescott, the hearing in 6 days. Sarah spoke first. "If you go to Prescott and Hale finds out, he'll move faster. He'll force the court date up. We'll lose everything before you get back." "Maybe," I said. "But if we don't go, we have no evidence. We lose anyway." Jed looked at his wife, at her pregnant belly, at the home they'd built together. "I'm scared," he said quietly. "I'm terrified. But I'm more scared of what happens if we do nothing." Sarah took his hand. "Then we do this together, all the way." "All the way," he agreed. We left at 2 in the morning, took the North Trail to avoid being seen leaving town. The ride to Prescott would normally take 2 days at a steady pace. We planned to do it in a day and a half. Push the horses hard, Sleep light. 5 miles out, I noticed the rider. Behind us, about a mile back, staying at the same distance. "We're being followed," I said quietly. Eve glanced back without being obvious. "Gray coat. Big horse, one of Hale's men. He's not trying to catch us, just tracking." "Hale wants to know where we're going," I thought fast. There was a canyon fork about 2 miles ahead, narrow passage that split in 3 directions. If we could get there first, we could lose him in the maze. "When I say move, we move fast. Don't look back. Just ride." Eve nodded. We rode steady for another mile. Let the tracker think we didn't notice him. Then, when we rounded a bend that put us briefly out of sight, I said one word. "Now." We kicked the horses into a full gallop, veered hard left onto a game trail that cut through thick brush. The tracker would reach the bend in 30 seconds. By then, we needed to be invisible. The game trail opened into the canyon system. 3 passages, all looking similar in the pre-dawn light. We took the middle one, rode hard for another mile, then slowed, listened. Nothing but wind and our horses breathing hard. "Think we lost him?" Eve asked. "For now." We rode through the canyon for another hour, came out on the other side as the sun was rising, made camp briefly to rest the horses, ate hard bread and dried meat. Didn't talk much. But at one point, while we were sitting against a rock outcropping, Eve spoke. "I lied to you." I looked at her. "About what?" "About how I found this ranch. I told you I heard about it in town. That's not true." I waited. "I found it in land records. When I was researching Hale's pattern, your property came up again and again in his scouting reports. The location, the water rights, everything pointed to you being his next target." She paused. "I broke into your house not because I was desperate for shelter. I did it to see if you were strong enough to fight, if this land meant enough to you to defend it. So you tested me." "Yes. And when I saw how you lived, how you'd let everything fall apart after your wife died, I almost left. Almost decided you weren't the right person." "What changed your mind?" "I saw the garden, the one you'd let go to weeds, and I realized something. A man who keeps a dead garden doesn't care anymore, but a man who can't bring himself to plow it under still has hope buried somewhere. Clara's been dead for 3 years. I know, I came anyway, because I thought maybe the man she loved would honor the promise she made." I stood up, walked a few steps away. "You should have told me this from the start." "Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was just using Clara's memory to manipulate you?" I didn't answer because she was right. "I'm telling you now," she said, "because if we're going into this fight together, you deserve to know the whole truth." I turned back to her. "Is there anything else you're not telling me?" "No." I looked at her for a long moment. "All right, let's go." We rode into Prescott late the next afternoon, exhausted, covered in trail dust. But we'd made it. Franklin Aldridge's office was exactly what Eve had described. Small, cramped, files everywhere. The workspace of a man who cared more about the work than appearances. Aldridge himself was 60 years old, sharp eyes, methodical movements. The kind of man who'd spent decades outdoors before retiring indoors and brought all that patience and precision with him. He listened to our story without interrupting, examined the 4 documents we'd brought, studied the seal under a magnifying glass. 5 minutes of silence. Then he looked up. "This is him." He pulled out a thick folder from a filing cabinet, laid it on the desk. "I've been tracking this seal for 3 years. Clarence Webb, Maricopa County Notary. Died in '79. Seal reported stolen from his estate." He opened the folder. Inside were documents from all across Arizona Territory. 19 properties, 4 counties, all taken using this seal. He looked at us. "All filed by Victor Hale or his agents." "Why hasn't anyone stopped him?" Eve asked. Aldridge's expression hardened. "Because victims settle. Hale offers just enough money to make them walk away. By the time I get called in, the evidence is scattered. Witnesses are gone." He tapped our documents. "But this time you have 4 ranchers willing to stand together. That changes everything." "What do you need?" I asked. Certified court copies of the original land filings. If the originals show different seals or no seals at all, it proves these documents are forgeries. The territorial court has those? They should. We'll go now. The Territorial Records Office was dusty and bureaucratic, the kind of place where things moved slowly and nobody seemed particularly interested in making them move faster. But Aldridge had authority, former federal examiner. That title still carried weight. The clerk disappeared into the back room. 20 minutes later, he returned with 4 folders. We spread them on a reading table. Holloway property, filed 1876. Clean deed, no promissory note, no seal 1147. Calhoun property, filed 1875. Deed signed by Robert Calhoun while he was still alive. No debt notation. Reyes property, filed 1878. Water rights notation but no lien. Dodd property, filed 1880. Clean. Aldridge laid the forged documents beside the originals. These are fabrications, created after the fact, using a stolen seal to make them look legitimate. He looked at us. With my testimony linking this seal to cases across 4 counties, we can petition for emergency dismissal. How long? I asked. If we file tomorrow in Dry Creek and the territorial judge agrees to hear it, we could have a ruling within days. But then his expression darkened. There's one problem. What? Victor Hale knows the system. If he suspects we're building a case, he'll file for summary judgment immediately, get a ruling before we can present evidence. How fast can he do that? Eve asked. If he filed this morning, the judge could rule tomorrow. Eve and I looked at each other. We'd left Dry Creek 2 days ago. If Hale had moved fast. We need to get back, I said. Now. We rode out of Prescott within the hour. Aldridge promised to follow with the documentation, said he'd be in Dry Creek within 2 days, but we couldn't wait for him. We pushed the horses hard, rode through the night, switched to a faster route that cut through rougher terrain but saved time. 3 miles from Dry Creek, they were waiting. 3 riders blocking the road, gray coat in the center, 2 others flanking. Behind us, 2 more riders appeared from the tree line, cutting off retreat. Trapped. Gray coat walked his horse forward. Mr. Marchant, Miss Kincaid, Mr. Hale would like a word. My hand moved toward my rifle. I wouldn't, Gray coat said mildly. We're not here to fight, just to deliver a message. What message? The court hearing has been moved up. 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Emergency session. Judge Carver is already in town. My stomach dropped. Tomorrow morning. We'd never had 6 days. Hale had been planning this from the start. You never received notice because it was delivered while you were traveling, Graycoat continued. But the law doesn't care about that. The hearing proceeds whether you're ready or not. He pulled out a document, held it up. However, Mr. Hale is a reasonable man. He's prepared to make a final offer. He handed the paper to me. Settlement agreement. Cash offers for all 4 properties. $8,000 for mine. $4,000 for Jed. $3,500 for Minnie and Pete each. $4,000 for Frank. Total $23,000. Cash today, Graycoat said. Clean sales. No court. No fight. You walk away with enough to start over somewhere else. He paused. Or you show up to court tomorrow morning with no time to prepare, and you lose, Eve spoke, voice tight with controlled fury. We have evidence of fraud. Evidence takes time to present. Judge Carver runs a tight schedule. You'll get 15 minutes to make your case. He leaned forward slightly. 15 minutes to explain complex fraud across multiple counties to a judge who's already reviewed Mr. Hale's documentation and found it legally sound. Beat. You can't win, but you can walk away with enough money to rebuild somewhere else. I looked at Eve. She was calculating. Furious, but thinking. I turned back to Graycoat. Tell Hale we'll see him in court. Graycoat shrugged. Your funeral. The riders parted. Let us through. We rode past them in silence. Once we were out of earshot, Eve spoke. He set us up. He knew we'd go to Prescott. He moved the hearing while we were gone. Which means he's scared, I said. If he wasn't, he wouldn't be offering settlement. Or he's giving us one last chance to avoid what's coming. What's coming? Her voice was grim. Whatever Hale does to people who fight back and lose. We rode into Dry Creek as the sun was setting, went straight to my ranch, found all 4 ranchers waiting. Tom Briggs there, too. They'd gotten word about the moved hearing. I laid out what we'd found in Prescott, the original filings, the proof of forgery, Aldridge's willingness to testify. But Aldridge won't be here until tomorrow afternoon, I said. The hearing is 6 in the morning. Silence fell over the room. Frank Dodd spoke first. So even if we're right, we might lose because we can't present the evidence in time? That's Hale's strategy. Move too fast for us to respond. Jed stood up. Then what do we do? I looked at Eve. She was already thinking. We file an emergency motion tonight, challenging jurisdiction based on fraudulent documents, demanding the hearing be postponed until full investigation can be conducted. Will that work? Pete asked. It'll get it on record. Give the judge something to consider. Tom spoke up. Who files it? I will, I said. The court clerk lives in town. If I can get to him tonight, he has to log it before tomorrow's proceedings. Minnie stood. I'm going with you. This affects all of us. One by one they all stood, 4 ranchers, ready to fight. We went to the court clerk's house at 9 that night. Harold Birch answered the door in his nightshirt, read our motion twice. Then, to his credit, logged it into the official record with a timestamp of 9:43. It was done. Whatever happened tomorrow, we'd made our stand. Walking back through town, I saw lamplight in the hotel, heard voices, Hale's voice, raised slightly, angry. We moved closer, stayed in shadow. Through the window, I could see Hale with gray coat and another man. They filed something, Hale was saying. Aldridge is involved. We need to... The other man cut him off. The judge won't postpone. You made sure of that. I made sure he'd favor speed. But if Aldridge shows up with federal documentation, then we move faster. Silence. Then Hale, quieter now. Do what you have to do, but make it look like an accident. We pulled back from the window. Eve's face was pale. He's planning something. For tonight. We need to warn the others. We split up. Tom went to Frank's place. Minnie to Pete's. Eve and I rode hard to Jed's. Got there at 11. Found Jed and Sarah already asleep. Knocked hard. Jed came to the door with a rifle. Cole? What's wrong? Hale's planning something. Tonight. You need to be ready. We stayed with them. Watched the road. Waited. At 2 in the morning we saw the orange glow. Not at Jed's place. At mine. We rode back at a full gallop. Could see the fire from a mile away. My barn, fully engulfed in flames. By the time we arrived, neighbors were already there, fighting the blaze. The animals were safe, moved out in time, but the barn was a total loss. Tom Briggs found me in the chaos. Someone poured kerosene along the base. This was deliberate. I stood there watching everything burn, watching 3 years of neglect and 1 week of hope go up in smoke. Eve came to stand beside me. Didn't say anything, just stood there. After a while I spoke. He sent his message. Yeah, he did. But then Sarah Holloway stepped forward. Her face was set, determined. Let him send his messages. We're not leaving. She looked at the burning barn. My husband built that barn 12 years ago. It was wood and nails. We'll build another one. Pause. But this land is ours, and no one is taking it. The community rallied around us then. Tom promised timber. Minnie had tools. Pete offered hands for rebuilding. I looked at these people, these families, standing together in the firelight, and I understood something Hale never would. You can burn a barn, but you can't burn community. You can steal land, but you can't steal the will to fight back. We worked through the night, put out the fire, saved what we could, made plans for tomorrow. As dawn broke, we stood together, 4 ranchers and their families, Tom Briggs, Eve, me, ready to walk into that courthouse, ready to face a man who'd built an empire on other people's fear, ready to prove that sometimes The most dangerous people aren't the ones with money and power. They're the ones with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The courthouse clock showed 5:45 when we arrived. The building looked bigger in the early morning darkness, more imposing, like it knew what was about to happen inside and was preparing itself. I'd been up all night, we all had. After the fire, there was no point trying to sleep. We cleaned up what we could, made sure the animals were settled. Then we rode into town together as the sun was just starting to paint the eastern sky. Jed and Sarah arrived first. She was pale, one hand on her pregnant belly, but her jaw was set, determined. Jed kept his arm around her shoulders like he was holding them both up. Minnie came next, wearing her Sunday dress, which on Minnie wasn't a sign of deference to the court. It was armor, war paint. She nodded once at me, sat down on the courthouse steps without a word. Pete and Maria pulled up in their wagon. The little girl was quiet, sensing the weight of what was happening even if she didn't understand it all. Pete lifted her down, held her hand. Frank Dodd rode in alone, dismounted, walked over to where I stood. "Still think we're going to lose," he said. "Probably. But we're doing it anyway." "Yeah." He extended his hand. I shook it. Tom Briggs was already inside, had been since 5:30, making sure everything was set up right, making sure Harold Birch had our motion filed properly, doing the quiet work that held everything together. Eve stood beside me. She'd changed into a clean dress, fixed her hair, but I could see the exhaustion around her eyes, the weight of 3 months of planning and 3 years of grief, all coming down to what happened in the next few hours. "You ready?" I asked her. She looked at the courthouse door. "No, but I'm here anyway." At 5:55, another wagon pulled up. Franklin Aldridge climbed down. He looked like he'd ridden through the night, which he probably had. He carried a document case, walked straight to where we stood. I got here as fast as I could. "The hearing starts in 5 minutes. Then we better get inside." The courtroom was small, maybe 30 seats, already half full with townspeople who'd heard something was happening and wanted to watch. At the front, behind a raised desk, sat Judge Carver, 50 years old, heavy build, face that gave nothing away. He was arranging papers, methodical, efficient. At the table on the left sat Victor Hale and his lawyer, a thin man named Pratt. They looked relaxed, confident, like men who'd already won and were just waiting for the formality to be over. Hale's 3 men stood at the back of the room, gray coat among them, watching everyone who entered. We took our seats on the right side. All 4 ranchers, their families, Aldridge, Tom, Eve, me. At exactly 6 o'clock, Judge Carver looked up. "Everyone rise." We stood. "Be seated." We sat. This is an emergency hearing on property claims filed by Mr. Victor Hale against 4 properties in Dry Creek. "Mr. Pratt, you may present your case." Pratt stood, smooth, professional. He laid out the case like he'd done it 100 times before, which he probably had. "Your Honor, we have 4 clear cases of unpaid debt. Promissory notes, properly notarized, legally binding. The defendants have had ample opportunity to settle these debts. They have refused. We seek summary judgment for immediate transfer of title." He placed the 4 forged documents on the judge's desk. Judge Carver picked them up, reviewed them. His face showed nothing. "And the defendants, do they dispute the validity of these debts?" Before anyone could answer, Aldridge stood. "Your Honor, Franklin Aldridge, former federal land examiner. I have evidence these documents are forgeries." The courtroom went completely silent. Pratt was on his feet immediately. "Objection. This is a debt hearing, not a criminal investigation. Mr. Aldridge is not counsel of record and has no standing." Judge Carver raised his hand. Pratt stopped talking. "Mr. Aldridge, you're not listed as counsel for the defendants." "No, Your Honor, but I have documentation proving a pattern of fraud across 4 Arizona counties using a stolen notary seal." The judge studied Aldridge for a long moment. "I'll hear your evidence, but be brief. I have other matters on my docket." Aldridge approached the bench with his document case, opened it, began laying out papers with the precision of a man who'd spent his career building cases. Your Honor, every document Mr. Hale has filed bears notary seal number 1147. He placed comparison documents on the desk. This seal belonged to Clarence Webb, a Maricopa County notary who died in 1879. His seal was reported stolen from his estate that same year. He showed the death certificate, the police report of the theft. I have documented this seal's use in 19 fraudulent land claims across Arizona Territory over the past 6 years. He laid out a map, marked with red dots: Flagstaff, Prescott, Tucson, Phoenix, Dry Creek. 19 properties, 4 counties, same seal, same pattern, all filed by Victor Hale or his agents. Judge Carver leaned forward, studied the documents, the map, the seal comparisons. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Finally, the judge looked up, not at Aldridge, at Hale. Mr. Hale, do you have an explanation for why your documents all carry a seal from a deceased notary? Hale stood, calm, composed, like he'd been expecting this question and had his answer ready. Your Honor, I relied on land agents and legal counsel to handle the documentation. If there was fraud in the notarization process, I am as much a victim as these ranchers. I acted in good faith. Aldridge didn't wait to be called on. Your Honor, Mr. Hale personally signed the filing forms for every one of these properties. His signature appears on documents in 4 different counties, spanning 6 years. He pulled out more papers, showed them to the judge. This is not the work of a victim. This is the work of a system. Pratt objected again. Your Honor, pattern evidence and speculation are not proof of Mr. Hale's personal culpability. My client— I've heard enough. Judge Carver's voice cut through the room like a blade. Everyone went silent. The judge sat back, looked at the evidence spread before him, looked at the ranchers, looked at Hale. Based on the evidence presented, I find reasonable cause to question the authenticity of these documents. Relief started to ripple through our side of the courtroom. But the judge wasn't finished. However, I cannot dismiss these claims outright without a full investigation. Therefore, I am ordering the following. He picked up his pen, started writing. 1. All property transfers are stayed pending investigation. The ranchers retain possession of their land. Jed grabbed Sarah's hand. Pete closed his eyes. Minnie's shoulders dropped like she'd been holding her breath for days. 2. The territorial prosecutor will review Mr. Aldridge's evidence for potential criminal fraud. Hale's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. 3. Mr. Hale is ordered not to leave Dry Creek until the investigation concludes. The judge looked at Marshal Webb, who was standing at the back of the room. Marshal, you'll coordinate with the territorial prosecutor's office. Marshal Webb straightened, nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Carver brought his gavel down once. Sharp. Final. This hearing is adjourned. The courtroom erupted, not in cheers. The moment was too heavy for that, but in exhaled breath, in quiet tears, in the sound of people who'd been braced for impact and suddenly found solid ground beneath them. I turned to Eve. She was crying, silent tears running down her face. I put my hand on her shoulder. She leaned into me, just for a moment. Across the aisle, Hale was standing with Pratt. They were speaking in low, urgent voices. Graycoat had moved closer to them, listening. Then Hale looked directly at me. For 3 long seconds, we stared at each other across that courtroom. His face was calm, patient, like a man who'd lost a hand of cards but still had plenty of chips left to play. Then he turned and walked out. His men followed. Marshal Webb intercepted him at the door, said something I couldn't hear. Hale nodded, kept walking. Outside the courthouse, people gathered in small groups, speaking in low voices. The particular kind of conversation that happens after something big shifts, but nobody's quite sure what it means yet. Jed found me by my horse. Cole, I don't know how to— You don't have to say anything. My father's name is cleared. That matters. He shook my hand with both of his. Sarah came over, put her hand on my arm. Thank you. For our family. For our home. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Minnie walked past, squeezed my shoulder without breaking stride, which from Minnie was equivalent to a standing ovation. Pete stopped with Maria. "Mr. Cole," the little girl said shyly, "Papa says you helped us keep our house." I knelt down to her level. "Your papa helped too. He was brave," she smiled. Pete's eyes were wet. Frank Dodd was the last to leave. He stopped beside me, looked back at the courthouse. "I was wrong about you," he said. "You were being careful, nothing wrong with that." "Yeah, well, next time I'll be careful and trust you." He mounted his horse, paused. "I've got timber, good timber, for rebuilding that barn. I'll bring it by next week. I appreciate that." He rode off. Tom Briggs came out of the courthouse last. He looked tired, but satisfied. "Aldridge is meeting with the prosecutor now. Says the case is strong." "Good." Tom looked at Eve, who was standing a little ways off, talking to Aldridge. "She came out of nowhere," Tom said quietly. "Showed up and turned everything upside down." "She did." "You know what you're doing with her?" I watched Eve, the way she gestured as she spoke, the determined set of her shoulders, the exhaustion and hope mixed together in her expression. "No idea," I said. Tom grinned. "Good. Keep it that way. The minute you think you know, it all goes sideways." He clapped me on the shoulder and walked to his horse. Eve came over. Aldridge had left. We were alone by the hitching post. "He's going to stay in Dry Creek for a few weeks," she said. "Help the prosecutor build the case." "And your father's land?" "Aldridge sent word to Flagstaff this morning. Asked them to review the case based on today's findings." She looked at me. "He said it could take months, but it's moving." "That's good." We stood in silence for a moment. "I need to tell you something," Eve said. "All right." "I'm scared." It was the first time she'd said it out loud. "Of what?" "That this isn't over, that Hale will find a way around it. That the prosecutor will drop the case or the territorial court will side with him anyway." She paused. "And I'm scared that even if we win, I don't know what comes next. For me, for my father, for any of this." I took her hand. "We won today. That's enough for today." "Is it?" "Has to be. Tomorrow we'll worry about tomorrow." She nodded, squeezed my hand. "Cole?" "Yeah?" "That kiss. Last night. Was that just—" "No," I cut her off. "It wasn't just anything." She looked up at me. "Then what was it?" "I don't know yet, but I want to find out." A small smile crossed her face. The first real smile I'd seen from her. "Me too." We rode back to the ranch together. The sun was fully up now. The burned barn stood like a black skeleton against the morning sky. But the land around it was still there, still good, still ours. We'd won a battle. Not the war, but a battle, and sometimes that's all you can ask for. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about Hale's face in the courtroom. That patient, calculating expression. Men like Hale didn't give up. They adapted. Around 11, I heard hoofbeats, fast, coming up the drive. I grabbed my rifle, went to the window. Tom Briggs, riding hard. I met him at the door. "What's wrong?" "Fire at Jed's place, his barn. Started about an hour ago." My blood went cold. "Is everyone safe?" "Yeah, they got out. Animals too, but the barn's gone." "Same as mine." "Kerosene?" Tom nodded grimly. "Found this near the foundation." He handed me a piece of cloth. Gray. Expensive material. From Graycoat's jacket. "Hale's sending a message," I said. "Yeah. The question is, what do we do about it?" I looked at the piece of cloth. At my own burned barn. "We rebuild. Both barns. Together." Tom stared at me. "You're serious?" "Completely. Hale wants to break us by taking away what we've built, so we build it back. Bigger, better, as a community." Tom was quiet for a moment. Then he grinned. "I'll spread the word. We'll start this weekend." He rode off into the night. I stood there on my porch, looking out at the land that had almost been taken from me, the land I'd almost let die through neglect. And I understood something then. Hale could burn buildings, but he couldn't burn determination. He could forge documents, but he couldn't forge community, and in the end, that would be his downfall. 3 months passed. I'm going to tell you how those 3 months went, because the waiting part of a story matters as much as the fighting part. Maybe more. The first week after the hearing, nothing happened. Hale stayed in town, visible, calm. He'd take coffee at the hotel in the morning, walk the main street in the afternoon, acting like a man without a care in the world. But he was being watched. Marshal Webb made sure of that. And the territorial prosecutor had frozen all of Hale's property acquisitions across Arizona while the investigation proceeded. The second week, we started rebuilding the barns. Mine first, then Jed's. The whole community came out, not just the ranchers who'd been targeted, others too, people who'd heard what happened and wanted to help. Frank Dodd brought the timber like he'd promised. Good pine, straight and strong. Tom Briggs organized the work crews. He was good at that. Knew who was best at framing and who should handle the roof. Pete Reyes and his daughter came every day after his regular work was done. Maria would hand us nails, count them out carefully, make sure we didn't drop any. Minnie brought food, massive amounts of food. Said she wasn't much use with a hammer anymore, but she could still cook. The spread she laid out each day could have fed twice our number. Sarah Holloway, despite being 8 months pregnant now, insisted on helping. Jed tried to make her rest, but she just gave him a look and kept working. And Eve. Eve was everywhere, holding boards, measuring angles, making sure everything was square and level. Working like the barn was her own. We finished my barn in 2 weeks. Jed's in another 10 days. They weren't fancy, but they were solid, built right, built to last, and they were built by people who cared about more than just the wood and nails. The third week, Aldridge came by with news. The territorial prosecutor had formally charged Hale with 19 counts of fraud. The trial was set for 6 months out in Tucson. That's a long time, I said. Legal process is slow, Aldridge replied, but it's moving in the right direction. He had more news. I've been in contact with Flagstaff. They're reviewing your father's case based on the pattern we've established here. Eve had been standing in the doorway. She stepped forward. How long will that take? 4 to 6 months, maybe longer. These things don't move fast. I saw the disappointment in her face. She'd been hoping for something quicker, but Aldridge wasn't finished. However, I can tell you this. The evidence is strong, very strong. If the review goes forward the way I expect, your father's land will be returned to him. Eve's hand went to her mouth. You're sure? As sure as I can be without a final ruling, but yes, I'm confident. After Aldridge left, Eve and I sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the newly rebuilt barn. My father can come home, she said quietly, if he wants to. What do you mean? I chose my words carefully. 6 months of waiting. 6 months of not knowing if he'll get his land back or have to start over somewhere else. That's hard on a man who's already been through what he's been through. She was quiet for a long time. You're saying he might not want to come back, even if he can. I'm saying he might need time, and he might need you there with him while he heals, before he decides what comes next. She looked at me. I'd have to go to Flagstaff. For a while, yeah. And you'd be here, yeah? Silence. Unless you want to come with me, she said. I thought about that. About leaving this land, this community we'd built, the work we'd started. I can't leave right now, not with everything still uncertain. Tom and the others, they need someone here. She nodded, understanding. But, I said, she looked up, when your father's ready, when things settle, you could come back, if you wanted, to visit, to stay. Her breath caught. Cole, I'm not asking you to decide now. I'm just saying the door's open, when you're ready. She took my hand. What if I'm never ready? What if I go to Flagstaff and realize I need to stay there, help my father rebuild his life? Then I'll understand. And I'll be grateful for the time we had. She was crying now, quiet tears. I don't want to leave. I know, but sometimes leaving is the right thing, even when it's hard. We sat like that for a long time, holding hands, watching the sky turn from orange to purple to deep blue. The fourth month brought winter, early snow in the mountains, cold nights that made you appreciate a good fire and a warm house. Hale's trial date got pushed back. Some procedural issue with the prosecution's evidence gathering, new date set for 8 months out. Eve started making preparations to go to Flagstaff. Her father's health had improved enough that he could receive visitors. She wanted to see him, tell him in person what had happened here. We didn't talk much about her leaving, just made plans quietly. Tom agreed to check on the ranch while she was gone. Minnie offered to bring by meals so I wouldn't starve. The night before she left, we sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd first cooked dinner for me 4 months ago. "I have something for you," she said. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, handed it to me. I opened it. It was a drawing. Pencil, simple but precise. 4 apple trees in a row. Young trees, just planted. "What's this?" My father drew it, from memory. These were the 4 trees my mother planted at our ranch, before Hale took it. She paused. "I thought if we ever plant trees here, by your North Creek where Clara's trees were, we could use this as a guide." I looked at the drawing, at the careful spacing, the way each tree was rendered with its own character. "Your father drew this?" His hands are shaky now, but he wanted to do it, said it helped him remember what he was fighting to get back. I folded the drawing carefully, put it in my shirt pocket. "I'll keep this safe." "And you'll plant them when I get back?" "When you get back." She smiled. "That's a promise, then." "It's a promise." She left the next morning, early, before the sun was fully up. I helped her load her saddlebags, checked her horse, made sure she had everything she needed for the 2-day ride to Flagstaff. "You'll write?" I asked. "Every week. And you'll tell your father everything. About the hearing. About Aldridge. About all of it." "I will." We stood there by her horse, neither of us quite ready to say goodbye. "Cole?" "Yeah." "Thank you for fighting when you didn't have to, for believing me when you had no reason to. You gave me a reason to care again. That's worth more than you know." She stepped close, kissed me, long and deep and full of all the things we hadn't said. When she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. "I'll come back." "I know." She mounted her horse, looked down at me. "Take care of this place, and yourself. You too." She rode off. I watched until she was out of sight. Then I stood there for a while longer, looking at the empty road. Tom found me an hour later, still standing in the same spot. "She'll be back," he said. "I know." "You sure about that?" "No, but I have to believe it anyway." He nodded. "Come on, we've got fence to mend." The 5th month was quiet. Letters came from Eve every week like she'd promised. Her father was doing better, speech improving, starting to walk with just a cane instead of needing support. The Flagstaff court had officially reopened his case, reviewing all the evidence. Aldridge had gone up there twice to testify. Things were moving, slowly, but moving. Here in Dry Creek, life settled into a rhythm. Work, community gatherings, quiet nights. Hale was still in town, still under the marshal's watch, but he'd stopped being aggressive, stopped trying to intimidate anyone. He just waited, patient as ever. Sometimes I'd see him on the street. We'd nod at each other, nothing more. Like 2 men who'd fought a battle and were now in the strange limbo of waiting for the final outcome. The 6th month brought spring, snow melting in the mountains, first green shoots pushing up through the winter dead ground. And it brought news from Flagstaff. The territorial court had vacated the original ruling against Daniel Kincaid. His land was legally his again, full title restored, and Hale was ordered to pay restitution for the years of lost income. I got the telegram at noon, rode immediately into town, found Aldridge at the hotel. "Is it final?" I asked. "It's final. Daniel Kincaid owns his land free and clear." I couldn't speak for a moment. "And Eve, does she know?" "Telegram went to her this morning." I rode back to the ranch, started working in the garden, the plot Eve had cleared and planted months ago. The squash was coming up strong. Tomatoes were budding. I was so focused on the work I didn't hear the horse until it was almost in the yard. I looked up. Eve. She was thinner, road-worn, but her eyes were bright. I dropped the hoe, walked to meet her. She dismounted, stood facing me. I came back. I can see that. My father got his land back. I heard. He's selling it. That surprised me. Why? Because he says that land was his past, and he's ready to think about his future. She paused. He's coming here, to Arizona. Wants to be near me. Where will he go? She looked around, at the ranch, the new barn, the garden. I was hoping here, if there's room. I stared at her. You want your father to live here? I want to live here, with you, if you'll have me. And my father needs somewhere to recover, somewhere with people who understand what he's been through. She stepped closer. Cole Marchant. I spent 3 months in Flagstaff watching my father get his life back. And every day I wished I was here, with you, building something that matters. She pulled something from her pocket, a small bundle wrapped in cloth. My father wanted me to give you this. I unwrapped it. Inside was a ring, simple silver band, handmade. He made it himself, said if I was serious about coming back here, I should give this to the man who fought for people he didn't even know, who stood up when it would have been easier to walk away. I looked at the ring, at Eve, at this woman who'd walked into my life 4 months ago and turned everything upside down. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking if you want to build a life together, here, on this land, with my father nearby until he's strong enough to decide what he wants next. I thought about Clara, about the 3 years I'd spent in darkness after she died, and I thought about what she would want, not for me to stay in that darkness forever, but to find light again, to live again. Yes, I said. Eve's face broke into the biggest smile I'd seen from her. Yes? Yes? To all of it? You, your father, building a life together. I took the ring, slid it onto her finger. But I have one condition. What? We plant those apple trees, 4 of them, by the North Creek, before your father arrives. She laughed. Actually laughed. Deal. We planted the trees the next week. 4 saplings, small and fragile, but alive. We dug the holes together, measured the spacing using her father's drawing, set each tree carefully. When we were done, we stood back and looked at them. They're so small, Eve said. Everything starts small, but with time and care, they'll grow. Think we'll see them bear fruit? I hope so. She took my hand. Cole, what Clara planted here, what my mother planted in Flagstaff. They were both trying to build something that would last beyond them. I know. That's what we're doing too. Isn't it? I looked at the 4 small trees, at this woman beside me, at the land we'd fought to protect. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. Daniel Kincaid arrived 2 weeks later. Tom Briggs brought him in a wagon, made the trip to Flagstaff and back just to help an old man get to his daughter. Daniel was thinner than I'd expected, older. The stroke had taken its toll, but his eyes were clear, sharp, and when he shook my hand, his grip was still strong. Mr. Marchant, my daughter tells me you're a good man. I try to be. She also tells me you're going to marry her, if she'll have me. He smiled. She'll have you. Question is, can you handle her? Eve swatted his arm gently. Papa. What? I'm just saying, you're a stubborn woman. Takes a strong man to match that. Daniel looked at me seriously. You fought for people you barely knew, stood up to a man who'd taken everything from my family. My daughter says you did it because it was right. I did it because I was tired of letting wrong things go unchallenged. He nodded. That's good enough for me. We got him settled in the spare room. It took some adjusting. 3 people in a house that had been built for 2 and then emptied to 1. But we made it work. Daniel helped where he could. His speech was still slurred, but improving every day. He'd sit on the porch and give directions for ranch work. Teach me things he'd learned over 40 years of working land. Eve and I set our wedding for the fall. Small ceremony, just family and the community that had fought beside us. The 7th month brought Hale's trial. We all went to Tucson for it. All 4 ranchers, Tom, Aldridge, even Daniel, though the trip was hard on him. The trial lasted 3 days. Aldridge testified for 4 hours, laid out the entire pattern, 19 properties, stolen seal, systematic fraud. The defense tried to argue Hale was a victim of his agents, that he'd been deceived too. Nobody believed it. The jury deliberated for 2 hours, found Hale guilty on all 19 counts. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in territorial prison, plus restitution to all victims. When the gavel came down, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just tired relief. Like a weight I'd been carrying was finally set down. We filed out of the courtroom, found Hale being led away in chains by the territorial marshal. He saw us, stopped, looked at each of us in turn. The 4 ranchers he'd tried to destroy, the examiner who'd tracked him for years, the woman whose father he'd broken, and me, the man who'd chosen to fight when it would have been easier to take the money and walk away. "This isn't over," he said. His voice was calm, patient, like always. Daniel Kincaid stepped forward, leaned on his cane, looked Hale in the eye. "Yes," he said clearly, "it is." They led Hale away. We watched him go. Then we went home. The 8th month brought our wedding, October. The same month Eve had first appeared in my kitchen. We held it at the ranch, set up chairs in the yard. The whole community came. More people than I'd realized cared. Reverend Matthews from town performed the ceremony, short and simple, the way we'd wanted it. Jed and Sarah were there with their new baby, a boy. They'd named him Cole, which made me tear up, though I tried not to show it. Minnie brought enough food to feed twice our number. Again. Pete and Maria sat in the front row. The little girl held a bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked herself. Frank Dodd played fiddle during the ceremony, surprisingly well. Tom Briggs stood beside me as my best man. Grinned the whole time like he'd known this would happen all along. And Daniel Kincaid walked his daughter down the makeshift aisle. Slow, steady, proud. When Eve reached me, he placed her hand in mine. "Take care of her," he said. "I will. And she'll take care of you." "I know." He smiled, stepped back. The ceremony itself was a blur. I remember the words, the vows, the ring on her finger, and mine on my hand. But what I remember most clearly is the moment after, when the Reverend said we were married, and I looked at this woman who'd become my wife. And I realized my life had been broken for 3 years, and then she'd walked into it and helped me put it back together. Not by fixing it, but by showing me it was worth fighting for. We had a reception that lasted until sunset, people dancing, eating, celebrating not just a wedding, but everything we'd all been through together. As the sun was setting, Eve and I slipped away, walked to the North Creek where we'd planted the apple trees. They'd grown, not much, but visibly. You could see they were taking root, establishing themselves. "Think they'll survive the winter?" Eve asked. "With care, yeah." No, she leaned against me. "I'm happy," she said, simply. Me too. I didn't think I'd ever be happy again, after losing everything, after watching my father break. "But you are." "But I am." We stood there as the sky turned colors, orange and pink and deep purple. "Clara would have liked you," I said. Eve looked up at me. "You think?" "I know. She always said the strongest people were the ones who kept going after they had every reason to stop. That's what you did too. For 3 years you kept this ranch going even though your heart wasn't in it. I kept the motion going, but I wasn't living. And now?" I looked at the trees, at the ranch beyond, at the woman beside me who was now my wife. Now I'm living. The 9th month brought winter again, but this time it felt different. The house was full of life. Eve and I, Daniel. Sometimes Tom or Minnie would stop by for dinner, sometimes Jed and Sarah with the baby. The ranch thrived. We'd added cattle, fixed all the fences, cleared more garden space. Daniel's health continued to improve. He was walking better, speaking clearer, starting to talk about maybe finding his own place nearby, but not ready yet. And one evening in December, Eve told me she was pregnant. We were sitting by the fire. Daniel had already gone to bed, just the two of us in the quiet. "I'm going to have a baby," she said. I stared at her. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." I didn't know what to say, hadn't expected this, but the feeling that washed over me wasn't fear or uncertainty. It was hope. When? Summer, July probably. I put my hand on her belly, nothing to feel yet, but knowing it was there. "A baby," I said. She put her hand over mine. "Scared?" "Terrified. You?" "Same." We sat like that for a while, two people who'd been through hell and come out the other side, now facing something entirely new. "Clara and I talked about having children," I said. "Before she died, we wanted 4. 4? Yeah? She said a house wasn't really a home until it was full of noise and mess and life." Eve smiled. "Well, this is a start." Spring came again. The apple trees bloomed. Small white flowers that would become fruit in a few years if we kept caring for them. The garden produced more than we could eat. We shared with neighbors, started preserving for winter. The ranch felt alive in a way it hadn't since Clara died. Maybe in a way it never had before. And in July, our daughter was born. Small, perfect, with dark hair like her mother and eyes that looked like they could see right through you. We named her Clara, for the woman who'd started this journey by planting 4 apple trees and believing something would grow. Daniel held his granddaughter with tears running down his face. "She looks like her grandmother," he said. His speech was almost completely clear now. "Like my Sarah." The whole community came by to visit, brought gifts, offered help, celebrated new life in a place that had almost been destroyed by greed. That night, after everyone had gone and the baby was asleep, I sat on the porch with Eve. "6 months ago," I said, "you broke into my house and cooked me dinner. Best decision I ever made. You lied to me, manipulated me, used me to fight your fight." "I did, and I'm grateful for all of it." She looked at me, surprised. "You are?" "Because if you hadn't done all that, I'd still be alone. Still going through the motions. Still dead inside." I took her hand. "You didn't save me, Eve, but you showed me how to save myself." We saved each other. "Yeah, we did." We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling for the night, the small noises from inside where our daughter slept, the wind in the apple trees. "You know what I think?" Eve said. "What?" "I think Clara and my mother would be proud of what we built here, of how we fought for it. I think they'd be proud that we didn't let the fighting destroy us." "That too." She rested her head on my shoulder. "I love you, Cole Marchant." "I love you too." And sitting there in the darkness, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The grief, the loss, the 3 years of emptiness, the stranger who appeared in my kitchen, the fight we'd almost lost, the community we'd built, the love we'd found. And I understood something fundamental about life. You can't control what gets taken from you. Land, love, people you care about, but you can control what you do after. Whether you give up or keep fighting, whether you close yourself off or open yourself to the possibility of something new. I'd spent 3 years choosing the wrong path, closing off, giving up. And then Eve had shown me another way, not by fixing everything, not by making the pain disappear, but by fighting beside me, by showing me that broken things can still be beautiful, that lost people can find each other, that land stolen can be reclaimed, that life, even after devastation, can grow again. The apple trees we planted would bear fruit someday. Our daughter would grow up on this land. The community would keep thriving. And maybe, if we were lucky and careful and brave enough to keep fighting for what mattered, we'd build something that would last. Not forever. Nothing lasts forever. But long enough to matter, long enough to make a difference, long enough to show that sometimes The most dangerous people aren't the ones with money and power. They're the ones who've lost everything and decided to fight anyway, because they've got nothing left to lose and everything to build. The end.